trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
Not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens. I don't know why I always end up in this view, but citizens of the internet, welcome to another exciting episode, another nail-biting installment of the politics show. Big Pearl, I love it. Thank you, brother. Always good to see you, my friend. It happens. First and foremost, happy Easter. Today, he is risen. Happy Easter, my friends. If you're into that kind of thing, some people might not be. A lot of people probably know this, but Easter was originally a pagan holiday, and that's the reason for all the colored eggs and bunnies. You know, those are all pagan symbols of renewal. And, you know, I don't know exactly what the bunny symbolizes, but I don't do tarot cards or astrology either. So, you know, there is that. But long story short, Roman Empire came in, took all the pagan holidays, slapped some Christian ones on top of it. And that's what you have now. That's why Christmas, I was actually just talking to a Swedish guy, and he was like, Yule, they called it Yule in Sweden. And Yule was a festival that predated Christianity. And the Romans or the empire, I don't know, forgive me, I'm not an expert in Swedish history, but whenever Christianity came into Sweden, this guy was like, there's no way that they could have taken away Yule. That was everyone's favorite thing. So it kind of was their way of gentrifying, if you will, the pagan holidays. Those evil Christians. But I went straight to the source for you, Google AI. Here's what Google AI says. The claim that Constantine rebranded pagan holidays as Easter is a popular theory, but lacks direct evidence-based support. Early Christians were already celebrating the resurrection while Constantine's council set a fixed date for Easter. It was designed to align with Passover, not necessarily to Christianize pagan spring festivals. Well, that's kind of a misnomer because, first of all, it's actually kind of genius because it also coincides with Passover. So then you get the Jewish people and the Christians. So very smart move on the empire's part. But pagan connections down here, it says, well, first of all, Constantine did not create Easter, but he did host the Council of Nicaea, forgive me, which decided Easter should be celebrated on the first Sunday following the full moon. So there you have it. I'm not going to read all that right now. Happy Easter. And if you haven't seen the Bill Hicks Easter bit, I think every time I play it, I get a copyright strike, so I'm not going to play it. But he has this whole thing about how bunnies and eggs are the story of Jesus. It's pretty funny, Mommy, I woke up and found a Lincoln log in my sock drawer. He's like, what? Why is it bunnies and eggs? What does that have to do with Jesus? Why not goldfish put Lincoln logs in your sock drawer? And then he has a little, Mommy, I woke up today and there was a Lincoln log in my sock drawer. He's like, that's the story of Jesus. It's much better the way he tells it, but you have to love that. And today is Easter. What a blessed day it is. So it's such a blessed day, in fact, that our beloved president, Donald Trump, tweeted out one of his beloved blessed messages to the world this morning. And I'm sure you've probably seen it at this point, but here it is if you have not. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. Now, that is, to use the word unhinged would be an understatement. Like, what? And I was never one of those people who was big on decorum. Like, the president said the F word, oh no. But it's just kind of like, did Pete Hegseth drunkenly tweet that at 4 a.m? Did Did Trump give Pete the password to his account and have Pete Hegseth Pete Hegseth tweet that out the other night? Because that is just, I'm like I said, I'm not one of those people who's all, but that's so classless. It's just, and it's so revealing, and it's so emotional and swinging at the fences. It's just such a presidential tone to it, on Easter no less. And it has to make you wonder if Pete or some Hasbro troll isn't running the account, Trump socials, when it comes out on Easter Sunday, because it's going to piss off a lot of like Christian people that voted for Trump, and they're going to be clutching their pearls about it, I'm sure. And his polling's already bad, so I guess it's kind of like he doesn't have to get reelected. He can kind of just be unhinged. He's also 70. He's nearing the end. Maybe a bit of dementia as well. Well, one of his old tweets went viral this past week from 2019. This one. And if you haven't seen this one, it's a banger. What's interesting about this too is every time I like it, I go back to it and it's unliked. I don't know if maybe that's Twitter might be able to argue that's an old tweet and that just happens because it's an old tweet or something, but it's kind of fishy because you can still respond to it and retweet it. So this is what it says. The United States has spent $8 trillion fighting and policing in the Middle East. Thousands of our great soldiers have died or been badly wounded. Millions of people have died on the other side. Going to the Middle East is the worst decision ever made. Yes, it is. Very much so. And so it's interesting to dig up, this is everyone knows that Trump ran on being the no new wars guy. And so to dig this stuff up, it's just par for the course. He was supposed to be the smart, we're not going to dump a bunch of money at this. We're not going to, and honestly, the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard as DNI kind of backed that up. I felt like a little bit. So you kind of like, we went, okay, she's, regardless of what you think of her, she's the lady that was on the no-fly list. She's the lady that they tried to smear as a Russian asset after she served in the military and in Congress. So, say what you want. I obviously I'm not a big fan of where Tulsi's at these days, but to me that was kind of a verification of what Trump was saying at the time. But obviously he's a con man. They're all con mans. They're all con men. Liberals, liberals are, right now with the Iran war and all the stuff that Trump is doing, liberals are screaming, we warned you. Oh my God, you should have voted for Kamala. Why didn't you guys vote for Kamala? I tried so hard and got so far. And if she were president, they'd be cheering for bombing Iran under the guise of girl boss regime change. Yay, our totally awesome woman of color president just decapitated the Iranian regime. Woo! Woo! America, fuck yeah! Or as I like to say, I like to do this one. Yay! America! Yay! Anyway, our glorious beloved president gave a speech the other day, and boy, was it a doozy. Boy, was it a doozy. First of all, the energy during this speech was on its own was pathetic, but then you have stuff like this, where he literally actually in the course of this speech contradicted himself. Directly contradicts himself. Listen to this.
Regime change was Not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred.
But we also won regime change. We have a regime change like nobody thought was possible.
Regime change was
like nobody thought was possible. And then, in addition to that, there's this term in Orwell, or if you've read 1984, doublespeak, right? And so doublespeak is when you say the opposite of what you mean, or the opposite of what's happening. And here's a good example of that right here. Listen to this.
they can't leave the power strip.
Hold on a second.
They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future. The whole world is watching, and they can't leave the power, strength, and brilliance. They just can't believe what they're seeing. They were the.
It's like straight up projection. They just can't believe what they're seeing.
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
So I thought this tweet right here was a nice summary of Trump's speech. Good job speaking, sir. And it looks like Trump thumb wrestling Trump, photoshopped onto the George Bush aircraft carrier with giant explosions in the background. It's a mission accomplished. He's got drool and the emblem of our best friends in the Middle East. So with all of this in mind, I thought we would take a little bit of a dive into how Trump regime media is reporting on things. And I say that with the utmost respect for the Trump regime. This is Fox News. Fox News. Actually, this is a better sample for Fox News. So Fox News really cups the balls when they fillet the president. Easter miracle is the headline here in Trump regime media. We're going to get into what this Easter miracle is in just a minute, if you don't already know. Big surprise coming. I'm sure you know. But what does CNN say, on the other hand? Well, CNN is, it's a little less of an ass-kissing headline, but it says, missing airmen rescued by U.S. forces in Iran. So it's not quite as cupping the balls as CNN is. Let's go over to MSNBC, or as I like to call them now, Multiple Sclerosis Now. They call it a daring night mission. So they're never one to shy away from gargling military balls, so they're not cupping the balls in the same way that Fox is. They've got some kind of counter stories over here. But a large portion of their advertisers and commentariat, that's a big special word there, commentariat. Ever heard that? Commentariat is kind of like proletariat, except it's a group of people that comment on TV. So you just learned a new word today.
That's beautiful, man.
And here in reality, on social media, this is where you get the raw truth. Iran has kidnapped an innocent civilian American flying his fighter jet above Tehran just because of his democracy. That's kind of what's going on in the world of media right now. You have an American pilot, I'm sure you know, was downed and captured as a POW. And from what I read, it was actually more than one American pilot. It was two of them. And in the regime media, you get the story that, there's still one that was missing and they're trying to rescue him. Well, what I read is that Iran said that the guy was still missing, even though they had got him, so that the U.S. would send in rescue teams, and they promptly shot those down. And I don't know how true that is. That's all alleged. Don't shut off my stream, YouTube. I had an interesting, just quick sidebar here before we continue with the Iran version of the pilot rescue. Last week in StreamYard, and I'm connected to Twitter, I'm connected to Rumble, and I'm connected to YouTube, right? So last week in StreamYard, my view count at one point was like over 100. It was 99, hovered around 99, 100 people. But at one point, I had over 100 viewers on my stream. Well, right after that, YouTube had an error and that miscounted stream views for some reason. So I found that to be slightly interesting, especially considering I have other channels and they're, I put out videos and you can kind of expect a certain return in views just on basically putting out the videos based on the number of subscribers you have. And I consistently see this with YouTube, and maybe it's just because they're taking time to like censor my video or something. I don't know, but YouTube, cut the shady shit, guys. Come on. So anyway, moving on. The mainstream news has a particular angle on what's going on with this whole pilot thing. And they basically kind of, build it as a win for America, which is, what's kind of their job. And we are censored from seeing foreign propaganda, which is absolutely stupid because you should honestly know, especially when you're involved in a war, which, I don't in any way agree with this as a war. And I don't think the majority of Americans are trying to fight it, but you should at least know what the quote unquote enemy is up to or saying. And thanks to social media, we obviously have these Lego videos. But this was one of the alleged Iranian accounts' view on this incident. Here, let me close this up real quick. The U.S. can only create a false narrative of victory from this scene. Killed many to save one, but couldn't save him. Now, this is all alleged. Keep in mind. Go ahead and turn that off. But this is apparently footage of the downed choppers that went in to get the troop or, the downed U.S. soldiers. And this is all, of course, alleged. Twitter may take these videos down as like fake propaganda, AI or whatever. But this is the other side of the story. This is what Iranian regime media is saying, if you want to call it that. What they're showing anyway. And just to kind of summarize that for you, aside from this video here, we've got, this is kind of a better, I think, breakdown of the string of events from Dr. Sam Youssef, PhD. The Pentagon's hiding the truth about the failed operation last night. Allegedly, the American camouflage for the landing operation at a remote airport in Isfahan was actually aimed at a major military landing operation. The American Isfahan operation was an initial landing operation for stabilizing entry routes and securing it for a large ground landing operation. And when it failed, the Pentagon diverted the compass with the excuse of rescuing the pilot to justify the failure. You don't rescue one pilot with a huge C-130. It was another major disaster and failure that they lied about. So this is kind of that looks like similar video to what we just saw, but these are that's their claim, right? So also, Wyatt Reed of the Gray Zone was reporting that there was an attack on a U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia. And this is all alleged. Just so you know, allegedly. We got Wyatt Reed here saying that former CIA counterterrorism chief says that the actual amount of damage done to U.S. bases and buildings are on the actual amount of damage done to U.S. bases and buildings after it was revealed that Iran penetrated Saudi air defenses, blew a hole in the exterior of the American embassy, then sent a drone through it to destroy the most secure areas. Iran was able to produce an indigenously made weapon, fire it across hundreds of miles, and put it into the embassy of their top opponent, which means they could have hit anything they wanted in the city, he says. So this is kind of the full story about what's going on here. And that just, I think, shows you how much is being hidden from us. So here's some other alleged footage from civilians. Oh, never mind. This one was taken down. I should have filmed it. This is the tweet I was going to show you. It's already been censored by our totally free press here. This makes me wonder, of course, if they're censoring this, because I just collected this link this morning as I was putting the show together. If they're censoring this, it has to be legitimate, obviously. Because if it wasn't legitimate, they would just put a community note under it with a thing that says this is AI video or this is, from 3 years ago or whatever. But they can't do that because it's probably legitimate footage. So once again, I think we're really winning. But I think this right here is my absolute favorite sign of winning, if it's still up. Let me put this back on the stage for you. So this is from, when was this? This is April 5th. So today, clear bullet holes and airburst marks visible on the C-130 Hercules airframe that crashed into Iran during the rescue operation, suggesting the aircraft was shot down by local villagers with rifles. This raises a critical question about how the two versions of the story that have now emerged. The U.S. says this is all alleged. The U.S. says they blew up the C-130s themselves to prevent them from falling into Iranian hands. But if the wreckage shows bullet damage consistent with small arms fire, they were likely shot down first, then destroyed. Were they were, I don't know why there's a question mark. They were likely shot down first and then destroyed by U.S. forces on the ground. Both versions are likely true. Villagers downed the aircraft with rifles. The U.S. forces finished the job with explosives rather than let Iran examine what's inside. The most advanced special operations force in the world, two $100 million aircraft shot down by farmers with guns, then blown up by their own men on Easter Sunday. So, obviously we are winning there, but this gets even better. This story takes an even more amazing turn for you when you see this report today by a legitimate Fox News reporter, Mr. Trey Yingst, I believe is how you pronounce that. And the United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters through the Kurds. President Trump told Fox News, "We sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them," President Trump told me, and I think the Kurds took the gun.
Now, the president also provided new details on what happened earlier this year as the Iranian regime took to the streets and slaughtered what the president tells me is 45,000 civilians in their own country. After that took place, President Trump...
God. So don't you love that too? That how that number keeps getting larger. The Iranians slaughtered, first it was 30,000. I think it might have been 20,000. Then it was 30,000. Now it's 45,000 civilians that the Iranians slaughtered. And at no point do they ever give names or photos of these people. The numbers, how long? So, and I can't remember who it was that made this point. I think it was, it might've been Max Blumenthal or one of these journalists, but the Gaza death toll is believed to be around 60,000, when you count up all the, and that was after like 2 years of Israel constantly carpet bombing Gaza. So the idea that these guys just like flat out murdered 30,000 people, you'd have to have like a literal murder factory with like conveyor belts to accomplish that in the amount of time that these guys said it happened in. 30,000, 45,000 people. That's a lot of people. And then where are the bodies? If they killed that many people, there would be some kind of a mass grave, or, they have all these covert officers in Iran. Why didn't any of them take pictures or video of the mass graves? Why is there no evidence to back up this alleged claim? But let's let Trey here finish, because now Iranian civilians are shooting at our military with guns we gave them, which is so typical for a U.S. war, arming both sides. That's what we do.
Told me the United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters. He tells me we sent them a lot of guns. We sent them through the Kurds, and the president says he thinks the Kurds kept them. He went on to say we sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them. And so a number of headlines here from my conversation with President Trump. All of this.
Liberals are like,
yay! I like that song. Yay!
So we dumped a bunch of weapons into Iran again, and they're shooting down our planes with them now. Trust me, bro. We won again. We're winning so hard right now. And critics will say, well, dude, you're just a useful idiot who's spreading propaganda. I thought they were and I thought these people, we've been propagandized to believe that these people were like some kind of cave dwelling camel jockeys who, and as it turns out, they're a lot classier than we are. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
So where are we at now? We are at this point. Military bases around the U.S. as of March of 2026 versus February 28th of 2026. Very interesting developments there. And of course, as you fail to grasp, Iran possesses such a vast arsenal of missiles and drones that it has been striking enemy targets in 11 countries for 30 days straight. You similarly fail to understand that Iran has no need for assistance from non-Iranian forces in a ground war and commands at least 5 million combat-ready troops within its borders, IRGC Army and Basel. Your calculations and understanding of the realities on the ground are utterly mistaken. U.S. military analysts are reading that like, utterly mistaken. I wonder what that means. What do you think that means, Benny? Fire another missile over there. Let's bomb the shit out of a bridge. America. This is Trump bombing.
No! I want to be
the retire.
No!
So, sending troops into Iran would be a bad idea. A very bad idea. As you can see. And I don't know if you've been following the news lately, but Pete Hegseth has been firing generals. But before we get into all that, I want to do a brief recap of the recent events of the past couple days for you with Mr. Larry Johnson on Judge Napolitano's show, because I think he does a great job here of just kind of summarizing, better than I could at least, what's gone down in this war over the past couple days. So let me share this with you right now, and let's watch Mr. Johnson.
You can make that claim with respect to Iran. We dominate in terms of putting fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft into the air. However, the President Trump said specifically, they have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. And then came, Friday morning in Iran. There was a F-15E shot down. That's a combat jet, and the pilot was rescued. But there are two two crewmen on that plane, and the other is called a weapons system officer, a WSO. They're still looking for him. So he could be a prisoner right now. He could be trying to practice escape innovation in hopes of getting to a place where he can be picked up. There was the A-10, the Thunderbolt, also known as the Warthog. It was shot down. It was also shot down, and it crashed into the Persian Gulf. That pilot was rescued. You had two Air Force helicopters called the double H-60G, excuse me, Pavehawk. One crash landed into Iraq and was recovered. The other was damaged but made it back to base. KC-135 declared an emergency, an SOS, around 10 a.m. And had to return to base in Israel. An F-16. So it was a bad day for the Air Force. Let's put it that way. And
what does all this tell you about Trump's boasts and about the situation the U.S. military is in vis-a-vis Iranian defenses?
Well, Put a ticket in, make her gay. In fact, they're reportedly using an IRSA-7, an IR-SA-7 missile that reportedly can loiter. So you can put it up and it flies around like a glider looking for something. Now clearly it's not going to go up to some of the altitudes that the U.S. aircraft are operating at.
So one of the most interesting aspects of this war is we look like this outdated kind of dinosaur of an empire with World War II era weapons, and here comes Iran, with Russia and China at its back, with these like modern weapons and these cheap modern weapons that are just completely destroying our bloated, sloth of a military right now. And I say that with all due respect to, people who work in the military. I do think a lot of them have, good intentions, but that's just the reality of what's going on right now, unfortunately.
But if any of the U.S. aircraft get down at that altitude level where these are loitering, then they're hit and they're targeted. So the notion that Israel and the United States have completely obliterated, wiped out Iranian air defense is just not true. And there are more U.S. Pilots that are going to be potentially shot and killed or involved with crashes and captured. So this is, this is running counter to the Trump narrative that they got everything under control and the Iranians are on their back heels and they're ready to surrender. Just not true.
Thursday of this week, in the middle of a war, obviously, in the middle of the movement of 10,000 ground troops to where we don't know, the Secretary of Defense, who calls himself the Secretary of War, fired the Chief of Staff of the Army. Coincidence in timing, or can you read anything into that?
Well, I got a note yesterday from a senior guy I've known. He was a senior officer with the Joint Special Operations Command. He felt that this is more not so much a protest over what the U.S. is doing in Iran, but there were some some issues with the gentleman. He was known to be a political partisan, but again, the problem I have here is that just when you start putting partisan politics into the military, it's a dangerous mix. It shouldn't be done by the Democrats. It shouldn't be done by the Republicans. But now Donald Trump.
Let's just pause right there, because that is where he loses me. Being opposed to the war at this point is not a partisan thing. And even if the guy's a Democrat or whatever, if that's what it takes to have opposition in the ranks to doing stupid things, then that's what it takes. My pipe just dumped resin like all over my lips. I haven't cleaned it in a while. Anyway, and so I disagree with him there that it's not good to have partisan, people in the military. It's good to have opposition. It's good to have a lot of differing viewpoints, and to just fire them when they put up opposition to something that's clearly, going to be detrimental to the organization as a whole. It's very, very concerning. And he's kind of saying that he doesn't think it's because they're opposing the the war, but because they have partisan interests. That doesn't make any sense. I think this is massive because I think it means they want to do a ground invasion, but the military brass is opposed to it. And it doesn't mean they won't do it anyway, but it's a bad idea. And anyway, here's Hegseth talking about firing the generals.
How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number, but
You don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
they all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
No, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking you why.
That we
And
need
you probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we
Why
want better representation.
Don't
take me, bro.
You can't explain why you fired any of them.
Gentlemen's time's expired.
How many generals and admirals have you fired?
Gentlemen's time's expired. He doesn't have a reason, so he can't say. So again, Larry's little argument here is, this is a partisan thing, and it wasn't really. He has a friend in the military that's telling him, oh, it's really not that big of a deal, probably because he wants to invade Iran. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the military that do want to invade Iran, and I feel bad for those people because they're going to be on the front lines. But again, to keep going here, this is the number one reason you should be opposed to war with Iran. Iran's Brigadier General Shekarchi, is that how you say that? Shekarchi. We are waiting for the ground troops. We will create a killing field so brutal no one will enlist in the U.S. Army for generations. They will never dare invade even the weakest country again. They ran from their own bases and hid behind civilians. We are ready.
ما منتظریم برای عملیات زمینی آمریکا انتظار میکشیم که آغاز بشه که آغاز بشه چرا؟
Because we will teach them a lesson that forever they won't dare invade even the weakest country. Iran's armed forces have this readiness. In close combat, face to face. We will bring such disaster upon the Americans that no one in the world will ever join the U.S. Army again. So much terror will be created. Such a killing field for them that for generations in America, no one will enlist in the American Army. No, that's an idle threat. And a lot of the tough guys in the Army will go, oh, yeah, we're going to get them. Well, they would like to see him say that. Fuck yeah. But that is a blender. Let's just be honest with ourselves. You're putting troops into a blender. Well, there are also reports that the current casualties are already much higher than the legacy media's letting on. Like legacy media.
Yay!
Is letting on. And there was recently an article in The Intercept about misreporting that I'd like to share with you right now. Let's go through it. Casualty cover-up. The Pentagon is hiding U.S. losses under Trump in the Middle East. The Pentagon has sent outdated statements on the number of U.S. troops killed or wounded during the Iran war, resulting in undercounts. This is from April 1st, April Fool's Day. So this is allegedly, and it might even be an April Fool's joke, YouTube. So if you are thinking about shutting off my stream for any violation of community standards, just remember this article is actually an April Fool's joke. Almost 750 U.S. Now, this is misleading, and I'm going to explain why. But let's read this. Almost 750 U.S. troops have been wounded or killed in the Middle East since October 2023. So they're going way back to get that number, as you can, 3 years. I mean, that's a lot of people over 3 years, though. But it's interesting because do you think that anyone would support this war effort if they knew about those casualties? Because those were kind of brushed under. Anyway, let me keep going. An analysis by The Intercept is found, but the Pentagon won't acknowledge it. So it's allegedly. It might be an April Fool's joke again. U.S. Central Command, aka CENTCOM, which oversees military operations in the Middle East. Hold on, let me get a better view on this so I can read this better. In the Middle East, appears to be engaged in what defense official called a casualty cover-up, offering to intercept lowball and outdated figures, and failing to provide clarifications on military deaths and injuries. At least 15 U.S. troops were wounded Friday in an Iranian attack on a U.S. Saudi airbase that hosts American troops, according to 2 government officials who spoke with The Intercept. Hundreds of U.S. personnel have been killed or injured in the region since the U.S. launched a war on Iran just over a month ago. President Donald Trump, who wore a blue suit, a red tie, and a ball cap to the dignified transfer of the first Americans killed in the war, said the casualties were inevitable. When you have conflicts like this, you always have death. Sorry. He said afterward, I met with the parents and they were unbelievable people. They were unbelievable people, but they all had one thing in common. They said to me one thing, every single one, finish the job, sir. Please finish the job. On Tuesday, so that's how they get you. Now you got to finish the job, sir. Makes me wonder if those are actually parents of dead soldiers or Mossad agents. On Tuesday, Trump teased that he would wind down the war with Iran in as little as 2 weeks, despite not achieving many of his stated aims, such as freedom for the people of Iran, taking the oil of Iran, and forcing Iran's unconditional surrender. At one point, the president even declared that the war would last as long as necessary to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. I think this is a good moment for the empire because it's been naked for a while, but this just reveals how completely insane these people are and how unhinged and stupid they actually are. The self-anointed elites. But let's keep going. CENTCOM has sent outdated statements on casualty numbers, meanwhile resulting in undercounts, including a statement sent Monday from spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins, noting that since the start of Operation Epic Fury, approximately 303 U.S. service members have been wounded. The comment was 3 days old and excluded at least 15 wounded in the Friday attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The command did not reply to repeated requests for updated figures. CENTCOM also would not provide a count of troops who have died in the region since the start of the war, and Intercept analysis puts the number at no less than 15. This is quite obviously a subject that Pete Hegseth and the White House want to keep under major wraps, said the defense official who spoke on the condition of anonymity in order to speak frankly. In 2024, now, just a quick side note here, this guy who's speaking on anonymity about Pete Hegseth's, what's going on, is probably a Democrat. So and that's fine. You obviously need some political, even if it doesn't matter. It's kind of like when something leaks and they're like, oh, that came from Russian hackers. Well, is it true? Because if it is, it doesn't matter where it came from. It's true. And the same thing goes here, It's kind of like just because a Democrat said it doesn't make it invalid. It just the question is it actually true? And if it is, then it's valid. In 2024, during the Biden administration, the Pentagon provided The Intercept with detailed chronologies of attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East that listed specific outposts that was attacked, the type of strike, and whether or how many casualties resulted, along with an aggregate count of attacks by country. The Trump administration's numbers, by comparison, lack detail and clarity. The current CENTCOM casualty figures do not appear to include more than 200 sailors treated for smoke inhalation or otherwise injured due to a fire that raged aboard the USS Gerald Ford before it limped off to South Soda Bay, Greece for repairs. CENTCOM did not reply to close to a dozen requests for clarification on the casualty count and related information sent this week. CENTCOM and the White House should be providing accurate and timely information on the costs and casualties involved in this war. After all, it is American taxpayers who are funding it and U.S. economic prosperity and economic well-being that is being undermined by it. Jennifer Kavanaugh, the director of military analysis at Defense Priorities, a think tank that advocates for measured U.S. foreign policy, told The Intercept. She would be called a Democrat. But it's another NGO, so I don't even know. Those types of people aren't even the most honest, but at least it's opposition. Again, if it's true, it doesn't matter where it comes from. And the U.S. has relentlessly bombed Iran. That country has responded with attacks on U.S. bases across the Middle East using ballistic missiles and drones. CENTCOM refuses to even offer a simple count of U.S. bases that have been attacked during the war. We have nothing for you, a spokesperson told The Intercept. An analysis by The Intercept, however, finds that bases in Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates have been targeted. They have to use that language, targeted. We'll get more on that in a minute. On Tuesday, Hegseth said that Iran retained the ability to retaliate for U.S. strikes, but that their attacks would be ineffectual. Yes, they will still shoot some missiles, he said, but we will shoot them down. On Wednesday morning, officials in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar all reported missile or drone attacks from Iran. Iranian strikes have forced U.S. troops to retreat from their bases to hotels and office buildings across the region, according to the two government officials. The defense official was livid about the Pentagon's failure to adequately harden the bases and ridiculed Hegseth's Tuesday prayer at a Pentagon press conference. May God watch over all of them each day and each night. May his almighty and eternal arms of providence stretch over them and protect them, said Hegseth. The kind of money he must be getting to corruptly run this operation has to be ridiculous, because you just have to be a complete psychopath to do this. Why didn't Hegseth protect them? The defense official asked. Anyone with a brain knew these attacks were coming. Pentagon spokesperson Kingsley Wilson did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Retired General Joseph Votel, head of Central Command, recalled that the U.S. troops in the region have faced drone attacks for at least a decade. At that time, we identified a need to protect against this threat and has taken far too long for the DoD to respond and provide adequate protection for our deployed troops, he told The Intercept, referencing drone attacks during the campaign against ISIS in the spring of 2016. It was a known exception, or a known expectation, that if attacked, Iran would retaliate against our bases, installations, and forces, and I agree that we should have anticipated and been prepared for this inevitability. Kavanaugh, who previously called attention to the vulnerability of U.S. outposts in the Middle East, echoed Votel. It has been clear for years that the rapid proliferation of drones and cheap missiles would put U.S. bases and U.S. early detection radars in the region at risk, yet the Pentagon did not the Pentagon did little to protect them, she said. The failure to invest in hardened infrastructure was a choice. Congress should see this failure as evidence that simply giving the Pentagon more money is not a path to national security. Now, when I start to hear these comments and I kind of see this backlash that's kind of building around this, the conspiracy theorist in me wonders if they didn't get him into this quagmire to completely derail his agenda and get, the pro-CIA Democrats back in power ASAP. And again, it's completely unhinged, the stuff that he's doing. But I honestly think it's probably the best thing that's happened for the country in a long time, because it's exposed the bloat and disgust, full-heartedly. It's in the same way that Trump exposed how ridiculous and fake politics is when he got into it. This epic disaster is exposing how fraudulent our military budget is, and our, look at this. We're using, and these guys are kind of summing it up here. Like she said in this criticism, and she may or Democrat or not, she said it's been clear for years that the rapid proliferation of drones and cheap missiles would put U.S. bases at risk. So why are we still using THAADs and all these like bloated, expensive bullshit, post-World War II era outdated antique technology? Well, I'll tell you why. Because a bunch of cunts are making a bunch of money off of it. And someone like Iran or Russia or China has onshore manufacturing. So even if they run out of missiles, it's not a problem for them. I was just reading the other day about how the U.S. can't make a lot of their weapons now because China holds the minerals needed. And so China's just like, yeah, we're not going to sell you these missiles, these minerals anymore because we know you're going to use them to make weapons to attack Iran with. And Iran's part of our coalition in BRICS. And anyway, I didn't take this whole article, but this is kind of the crescendo that I wanted to end with. We would be better off if the bases across the region were closed for good, she added. Thank you so much. Let me go for my applause sound effect. In public statements, Iran's foreign minister Syed Abbas Araghchi called out the U.S. for using civilians in nearby Arab monarchies of the Gulf Cooperative Council states as human shields. U.S. soldiers fled military bases in GCC to hide in hotels and offices, he wrote on X last week. Hotels in the U.S. deny bookings to officers who may endanger customers. GCC hotels should do the same. It's funny because if any other country was doing this, our people would be screaming about it in the press. Absolutely. You know that if Iran or Russia's using human shields, And so that's pretty much where it ends off. But I would like to close this out by showing you a couple things. First, in another effort to propagandize and propagandize by, if you've noticed, the U.S. press doesn't flat out lie. They lie by omission. And so this is another really good example of them lying by omission right here. One of the most important U.S.-based commercial satellite imagery providers on whom most media outlets rely says the government has asked all imagery providers to indefinitely withhold satellite images from the Iran war. And this is due to conflict in the U.S. government has requested all satellite imagery providers voluntarily implement an indefinite withhold of imagery in the designated area of interest, effective retroactively from March 9th. The planet is moving to a managed access model. So anyway, that is interesting. And I don't know if you saw that space mission recently that went up, but my conspiracy theory was like, oh, these guys aren't going to the moon. They're going up to try to fuck with Russia and China's satellites. They sent a team up there on the Space Force because Russia and Chinese satellites are providing Iran with targeting data. But even if they knock out those satellites, it's not going to, I mean, obviously this is conspiracy theory. So, this is all my for entertainment purposes only theory. But let's say that they were able to do that, in my conspiracy theory was true. And they really went up there and knocked out Chinese and Russian satellites. There's so many other ways there. Everyone has drones. You can send out surveillance drones. It's just, it's a new day. And I think it's a day where if you don't have the majority of the people on your side, you're going to lose. Because who's going to go, when it comes down to this, it's going to be a war of attrition, and no one in the United States is going to wants to fight this war. You're going to see mutinies in the armies, and you're going to see people, abandoning the military, and people in the U.S., protesting or at least doing something. But I want to close this out by showing you. I absolutely love this clip of George Carlin on Larry King a couple years ago because, like I said, the press doesn't lie anymore; they lie by omission. Or they do it very, very crafty. They have a very crafty way that they lie. And Carlin sums it up so well in this clip. So let me show you this real quick as we close this out.
Well, George, you're fascinated with language. Why? Because language is how they hide things, Larry. Hide what? Reality. Nobody lies anymore. They rename it. Example. It's not spying, it's surveillance. It's not propaganda, it's messaging. It's not censorship, it's moderation. That concerns you? No, what concerns me is people believe it. Well, George, you're fascinated with language.
Brilliant. The brilliant George Carlin, ladies and gentlemen. So, little side story here. I thought this was one of the highlights of the last week. One of the more positive stories. If you've ever seen Professor Marandi, he's in Tehran, but he's an American citizen who was born in the United States, of Iranian heritage, who kind of went over there, I think, to be a teacher, probably. And amidst all this chaos, there's been this push to get him to run for president. This is Ethan Lewis. And he says, I would genuinely vote for SM Marandi for president of the United States. I'm not even kidding. The Iranians on social media are saying everything Americans have wanted to hear from our own leaders. Our leaders are scared and Zionists. The Iranians are not. So Robin Minotti here chimes in. Yes, it does seem that Professor Marandi is not eligible to stand for U.S. president at present. Apologies. Oh. And then he says, yes, I'm not eligible. My name isn't in the Epstein files. So he is, it's a joke, obviously. He is technically eligible, but he's pointing out how he can't be president because he's not one of the ists. And he, despite all that, how funny would it be if we could get him into the nomination cycle for the Democrats? Just do like Ron Paul money bombs. I think those money bombs, because they're doing them for Massey right now, but I really think those money bombs should always be referred to as Ron Paul money bombs, because that was a product, to give credit where credit is due, to the Ron Paul people. And could you imagine Professor Marandi money bombs in the next presidential election cycle or the next Democratic primary cycle? Oh man. Who else could we get in there that's like a radical leftist? Marandi and maybe like Jill Stein or something, Butch Ware or something like that. I don't know. Well, we'd have to find a Democrat, but if not, obviously, if we tried to do that, the Democrats would cheat and install someone like AOC or John Fetterman. I could see John Fetterman totally taking the Democratic primary this year. Liberals like, John Fetterman!
Yay! I like that song. Yay!
I hit a weird button right there. Anyhow, let's move on to an update on our other war that we have going right now. That is the Ukraine conflict. I don't know if you've been following much of what's been going on here amidst all the Iran war chaos, because you know what? We're broke. People are dying of fentanyl overdoses in our streets in every major city. Why not start a few more wars and just go all in on imperial war piggery? This is, by the way, the good war, the war that liberals support, the war that you go, stand with Ukraine, and then the liberals go,
I like that song. Yay!
I'm going to be using that a lot more. I'm going to be losing my mind whenever I play that. But I want to start where our story began back in 2014, because a lot of people forget to remember this part of the story. But the Ukraine conflict started way before 2022. It started back in 2014 when the U.S. began funneling weapons to Ukrainian insurgents, if you will. And Richard here says, back in 2014, Ukrainian soldiers were shooting into the homes of civilians in East Ukraine. Allegedly, their mission was to spread terror and crush any dissent against the CIA-backed coup in Kiev. Allegedly. This is something the Western mainstream media should be telling you. Allegedly, but they won't. Oh yeah, I probably shouldn't play that because I'm gonna get in trouble. YouTube's gonna take down my stream for like gun violence or something. That's what they tried to do the other day, where I'm like, you can literally go on there and watch people. There's all kinds of bullets firing on all kinds of stuff, and they're like, oh, gun violence. Anyhow, this is where our story began, and this is how it's going today. Terrifying escalation. A top Russian official confirms a deadly strike just breached the Bushehr nuclear plant's protection circuit. He warns of a catastrophic nuclear incident risk is skyrocketing as a mass evacuations to the border begin. That is not good. Not good at all. But, a lot of the people that support the Ukraine war are probably very happy about it. But this is why I introduced the show last week by saying, welcome to World War III. Because now it would kind of seem like Europe is against the Iran thing. A lot of the European states are getting crap for not participating in the Iran war. But it's pretty easy to see when you look at the Ukraine thing that the EU backs that, and that the EU and the USA are kind of allied against Russia, China, and Iran at this point. And looking at the chessboard right now, if you will, and the positions and the pieces at play, be honest, who do you think is going to win that conflict? Take an honest, deep down look at your, reach deep inside yourself and be totally honest. In a war between the EU and the United States against Russia, China, and Iran, who's winning that war? It's not looking good, and I don't like to be a downer on my country, but to keep going here, this is Zelensky on Iran. The Ukraine does not share, this is from February 14th of this year. Ukraine does not share a border with Iran, and we have never had a conflict of interest with the Iranian regime, but the Iran Shahed drones are sold to Russia are killing, especially our people, Ukrainians, and destroying our infrastructure. The Iranian regime has already done and can still do more harm than many other regimes could in the century, and yet this regime still exists, and it hopes to survive everything, even this crisis. So he's clearly, it's pretty clear who he's working for. Now, there's a lot of talk that when the, U.S.-Israel kind of alliance runs out of options, they may use a nuclear option. And I want to show you why that is unlikely to happen, but also not really a problem for them if it does. And that is because Russia likely gave Iran miniaturization technology for their warheads in exchange for Iran's support in the Ukraine war. Today, I suspect that Iran has a cluster of nuclear weapons capable of hitting Tel Aviv in one of their underground missile cities, possibly Azad or Isfahan. So, I mean, that could also explain why they're trying to do a ground invasion into Iran. Obviously they want to get in there and clear out their missile cities if they can, but they're not going to be able to do that. Now, just when I thought I couldn't like Iran anymore, I came across this piece of news. Iran bombed Zelensky's apartment in Dubai. This was confirmed by the Saudi press. I don't think he was there, but
Iranian drone struck a...
This is alleged, of course, YouTube, allegedly the Iranians struck the apartment. And if you look at what they do too, they're pretty precision with these. Like they'll hit one apartment. It seems like they're very careful not to, to try not to at least hurt anyone else. Look at that. That's a pretty precision strike. And I'm sure it was probably a drone that they sent over there, but that was Iran's response to Zelensky, kind of accusing them of helping Russia, they just went right at him. So I think this is why the liberals are a joke, though, because they don't oppose any of this. And it's almost like your choice in America is between this proxy war in Ukraine or the even worse disaster in Iran. The Democrats here in the States and liberals in the EU are fully on board for World War III because their donors are all going to make a ton of money from it. And to prove that, here is, I love what the guys from the Durin call this woman, Kaya Kallas from the EU. They call her stunning and brave. But here's what she said recently about the war in Ukraine and where the EU kind of stands on this conflict currently. Listen to this.
We are raising this issue that we see that Russia is helping Iran with intelligence to target Americans, to kill Americans. And Russia is also supporting Iran now with the drones so that they can attack neighboring countries and also U.S. military bases. So these wars are very much interlinked. So if America wants the war in the Middle East to stop, Iran to stop attacking them, they should also put the pressure on Russia so that they are not able to help them in this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. But it gets deeper. Because when it comes like to a place like Ukraine or Gaza, mass murdering the civilian population, or mass extermination through military conflict of these populations is a feature, not a bug, when it comes to these wars. This is why I feel so bad for Ukrainians, because not only were they taken advantage of and a large portion of their population has been put into a meat grinder, but this is where things are going for them. And this is why you see someone like, oh, whoa, this is the wrong clip. All right, hold on a second. I gotta dig this clip up. I got the wrong clip. 1 second, because this is important part of the whole thing. So give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to stop looking for it because I finally found it. So this was the clip I was looking for to end this. I accidentally pasted the wrong thing. Need to double check this, but this says Ukraine was always the backup plan. Ukraine has become an extension of our good friend in the Middle East. This is why President Zelensky was installed and why most of the Ukrainian government is now of this persuasion. Native Ukrainian men have been captured, pulled off the streets, out of their homes, and sent off to deaths to fight in an unwinnable war. Good way to get rid of the Ukrainian population. Check this out.
Мы надеемся, что очень скоро
Soon everyone will return here, not just those. Many people there will be. So immigration to Ukraine. This is a beautiful, magnificent country. There is no extremism here, no radical Islam, which is very dangerous. There's no extremism there. As we saw, there is plenty of extremism there. Allegedly, that was surroundings are lovely. There's no country in the world as good as Ukraine. That is why we expect not only the return population that was here in the 1990s, but to have 70 million people here. So there you go. The bonus add-on to Ukraine and kind of the end of that story. So we're now going to move into a new recurring piece, the week in propaganda. All right, as we covered a couple weeks ago, there were some alleged terror attacks in the UK. And just to revisit this is my latest, how a fake Iranian terror group was invented to prescribe IRGC as terrorist or as a terrorist org in Europe amid the Iran war, the story of Ashab al-Yamin. So let's just read a little bit of this story real quick to give you an idea. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I'm already way past budget, way over budget here, but this is good. A series of arson attacks and alleged incidents targeting alleged Jewish-linked sites across Europe have been attributed to a little-known group called Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah, or Ashab al-Yamin. The group has been widely described in the media and security circles as Iran-backed network allegedly linked to the IRGC. Since March 9th, HAYI has been credited with what some analysts describe as hybrid warfare-style operations spanning multiple countries from Greece to Belgium to France, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. Among the most high-profile incidents was the burning of 4 ambulances in Golders Green, North London on March 22nd. The emergence of this group coincides with the escalation of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. In parallel, media outlets and pro-war commentators have warned that Tehran could expand the conflict by carrying out attacks across Europe. But a closer examination raises serious questions about its actual existence and the pro-Israel groups pushing this narrative. Several of the incidents attributed to HAYI do not appear to have directly targeted Jewish communities. Others remain murky, with limited verified information about the perpetrators. And beyond scattered claims and online statements, there is little concrete evidence that this group, as described, actually exists. In the fog of war, narratives can move faster than facts. At the same time, governments across Europe and the UK are moving to formally designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization, a policy long pushed by pro-war, pro-Israel lobbying networks. Many of the same actors amplifying the NAYI narrative are also leading that campaign within Western media to manufacture consent for war and accelerate this political objective of proscription. While raising the possibility that unverified claims of an Iran-linked threat are being leveraged to shape public fear and justify sweeping new security measures tied to the widening war. So he does an investigation. I'm not going to read all this, but he kind of goes through each attack piece by piece. So the first one is Antwerp on the March of 25th. And then the second one was in Greece, I believe. Liege, Greece, I think. And Amsterdam. There was one in Amsterdam. And then, of course, the Golders Green ambulance one, which we covered last week in the UK. So there is clearly a lot of, information warfare going on. And in this case, one of the things I found interesting about this is how they are using this to designate the IRGC as a terrorist group so that they can do certain things like arrest you if you say, hey, good job, IRGC, if you because you're supporting a terrorist group. And in Europe, as we've seen, they will do that. And a lot of the population in Europe, cheered it along as it went.
I like that song. Yay!
Speaking of propaganda and false narratives, there's been so much of that lately. I think it's quick sidebar here before we continue into this next piece, but it's kind of funny to me how the conservatives who were adequately skeptical of the whole, 2 weeks to flatten the curve thing, suddenly believe that the media is telling the truth about stuff that they like. I've noticed this with there's this guy, Matthew Marsden, who I think there's a lot of conservatives I started following because of their COVID takes, because I like that libertarian kind of, shade a little bit, where people are a little bit more about you leave me the fuck alone, I leave you the fuck alone. I think that's kind of what America's about. Unless you want to hang out, unless I like you, maybe I like you and we want to hang out, but otherwise leave me the fuck alone and I'll leave you the fuck alone. And then if I'm not hurting anyone, you have no reason to bother me. But I guess the point I was getting to with all of that is that it's just funny to see these conservatives like this Matthew Marsden guy who, were so good on the COVID narrative. Now that Trump is president, they're like, oh, now that Trump is president, the media is totally not lying. Everything's fine now. Trump is telling the truth. He would have never lied. The government's totally, it just shows you how strong these cult mentalities are, that they have people so hooked in that all you have to do is change the figurehead. And they're like, okay, now I believe everything. Now everything is right. Now you are correct. Now the news is telling the truth about the Iran war. Bleep, bleep. So this is a great photo to kick this one off, by the way. You're really gonna enjoy this. No one was buying the official Charlie Kirk narrative. No one with a brain. And that on its own is the reason for Candace Owens' popularity, because she's one of the people who jumped on that sentiment and ran with it. She saw and she was one of those people authentically, so it works. But she was one of the people who, when that happened and the text messages came out and the all the weird shady stuff that happened around it, they paved over the crime scene after the fact, and the decoy guys who jumped out and said it was me, like all that kind of stuff. So everyone, if you weren't just a partisan cult member, you were skeptical of the narrative around that. And I do think Candace Owens, like I said, her big success, the reason she was already successful, but the reason she exploded to massive prominence is because she saw the sentiment, the public sentiment of that around that, like a large portion of the public was on the same page as her, and she grabbed that ball and just ran with it and really turned it into something of note, and really an open source investigation, with a lot of her audience contributing a lot to it. But she's recently been vindicated. And rather than read this article to you, she said, where are all my neocons who have been overwhelmed by the non-existent evidence against Tyler Robinson? You should all be ashamed of yourselves. Hope the money was worth your soul. And the Daily Mail says, bullet used to kill Charlie Kirk did not match the rifle allegedly used by suspect Tyler Robinson. Now, there's a lot of different stuff we could examine to talk about this, but I think one of the best commentators I've seen talk about this is, we're going to go back to Larry Johnson on Judge Napolitano's show, because he brings up so many interesting little tidbits that they're just things that, if you're a thinking person, if you're a rational person, you would consider when examining this. And so I'm going to share this with you, and we're going to listen to what your boy Larry has to say.
Some some issues with the gentleman. He was known to be a political partisan, but again, the problem I have here is that just when you start putting partisan politics into the military, it's a dangerous mix. It shouldn't be done by the Democrats. It shouldn't be done by the Republicans. He's more with outside of that chain of command.
Okay, hold on.
One state.
Yeah, this is what's so odd. It's not that they are involved now, being asked to look at the ballistics. Being
let me
asked
go
to
back a little
provide
bit.
some
I
of
didn't
their,
get the
scientific capabilities to the case.
Hold on a second.
On day one,
we're going to start right here. My bad.
Excuse me. Right.
Correct.
Okay. To Charlie Kirk, why is the federal government involved in the investigation of a murder, which is a state crime and took place wholly within one state?
Yeah, this is what's so odd. It's not that they are involved now, being asked to look at the ballistics, being asked to provide some of their scientific capabilities to the case. On day one, they were right there involved. There are reports that there were 2 FBI agents at the hospital where Charlie Kirk was taken that were interfering with the doctor who was trying to treat Charlie Kirk. Then now you're going to step back and go, wait a second. Charlie Kirk was, even though he was from another state, but he's in Utah. The shooting took place in Utah. And the FBI's response to it was almost immediate. In fact, remember, within a couple of hours, Kash Patel's tweeting out, "Oh, we got him." And then, "Oh, no, never mind. We got the wrong person." Why in God's name was he even involved? Because forget that Charlie Kirk was a celebrity. Charlie Kirk was not a federal official of any kind. So this should be treated just like any other shooting. Yes, it was horrific. It was seen on television, but it did not cross that line of a federal crime. And unless you've got a federal crime, the FBI isn't involved. There's no way around. And unless the local police, after investigating.
So that is an aspect of this that I never even really considered, that he wasn't a federal official. So why did the FBI immediately jump in on this case? It's a very good question. And one that, it's interesting how quickly they moved to shut everything down and just push everything through. And that's another reason that his widow is so suspicious, because I think she said something publicly like, "Oh yeah, I really want this case to move fast, and I totally believe that this guy's guilty, and end of open and closed case, and we have all the evidence, and yada yada yada." But let's keep going, because there's some more interesting fact-based data in here that may surprise you.
And say, "Hey, we've got some unusual stuff. We need some help from the feds." They can ask for it then, but that should have come a day or two later. Heavens, Kash Patel was climbing on an airplane to get out there as quickly as possible. So what? That's the big red flag right there. Why the hell was the FBI on scene that day? What did they know?
So FBI agents in an operating room while surgeons are feverishly trying to save the life of a mortally wounded, well-known person. Reminds me of Parkland Hospital in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. What the hell were they doing in an operating room?
Well, these two, they weren't in the operating room. They were outside the door of the operating room. The doctor had exited, and when the doctor tried to go back in, they stopped him and weren't going to let him back in. It was like, guys, they got no jurisdiction here.
Right.
And yet, again, it's one thing if the FBI is called in and say, "Hey, well, listen, this is a complicated investigation.
Why
we need some help."
I don't even know if I heard that. I mean, I've watched Candace intermittently, but the FBI agent stopped the operating doctor from going back in. I mean, when this goes to trial, it's going to be crazy. But I'll shut up and let him keep going.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all
we're
time.
talking within the hour of him being shot, you've got multiple FBI personnel on scene, which candidly suggest they knew something. They knew what was going to happen. It's
Wow.
that bad.
Tell us how investigators can connect a bullet to the weapon from which it has been fired.
Okay, so I'll show you this.
Okay,
if
so-
a the claim is
I wanna-
a 30-06.
I wanna jump up a little bit here
So this is a
because-
30-06. I've drilled out.
He goes
the,
through right
gunpowder.
here how there's no possible way that Charlie was shot with, allegedly no possible way that Charlie was shot with the 30-06 bullet because it would have taken his head off. There's one more little piece up here that I would like to catch. Maybe we can move past it here.
Of course, that it would have penetrated through. What we saw didn't penetrate through. And frankly, even if this was what they call a friend, Kirk,
Give up a portion of our Saturday morning to discuss this.
well, the defense was finally given some information in the course of discovery, and it turns out the ATF, who's quite competent at this, could not match the bullet. And again, I'll put that up there just so people could see it. They couldn't match the bullet to the gun. That's pretty big. That's a big deal, because how do you know he even fired that? I mean, there are other things to point to how that raised serious doubts that he could have even fired the shot.
Right. So the striations on the bullet did not match the striations on the inside of the gun, the bullet that the doctors retrieved from Charlie's body and handed to the FBI, or the FBI physically took from the doctors.
Right. So what they do, they'll take another round, hopefully from the same ammunition that he was using. They'll fire.
It's kind of interesting if that's true, how they slop this together. How do you get to this point where nothing matches and it's just like, oh, here's our case.
Something like this was going to take place, and they had personnel in place to respond. That's what's so worrisome about it. And I think the work that Candace Owens has done on this has been remarkable, and she's come under a lot of attack simply for asking some basic questions, and the answers that keep coming back from people directly involved with Turning Point USA are not satisfactory.
In your opinion, did Tyler Robinson kill Charlie Kirk?
No, I don't think so. It is taking that shot at 140 yards with that rifle, and then supposedly being able to disassemble it. The whole story, it just doesn't add up. Plus, what the other thing that came out in the report was there were 7 different fingerprints, DNA recovered on that rifle. So just to say, well, this rifle, did Tyler Robinson have access to this rifle? Well, yes. Do we have evidence that he fired it that day? No, we don't. It's just that's the story we were told, and you're expected to buy it. But then again, when you say, okay, well, let's at least match up the bullet, except the rifle they're claiming that was used. Anybody can go into YouTube. There are video after video after video of different gun enthusiasts trying to replicate that kind of shot. And this bullet, when it's fired from that rifle at that distance, it should have completely blown out the back of Charlie Kirk's neck. I mean, the force would have been so great that and I don't mean to be so graphic on it, but people need to understand the kind of violence. It would have completely destroyed so much of his neck. And the notion that this kind of bullet is going to fragment on impact on a soft neck, give me a break.
So it's interesting because I just finished watching the Joe Rogan Theo Von interview, and Joe Rogan was kind of making an argument that that's possible on the Theo Von episode. And so I was kind of defending Joe Rogan a little bit after that, because I felt like a lot of people were piling on him. And I feel like people are doing, everybody wants to discredit Joe Rogan, because let's be honest, what other platform is even allowing those types of conversations to occur? So whatever way you get Joe Rogan discredited, it's good for the people who, run things, or the people doing these scams. And so I'm always a little bit skeptical of it. But then, you see those videos of there's this one going around. I think James Lee was sharing it, of this guy that guesses Joe Rogan's PIN number on the air. And it's kind of like, oh, everyone on Twitter's like, that's a warning, so you got to wonder. And then you see stuff like this where Larry Johnson, like he said, there's gun people, and you have to also love that about YouTube. Don't you love that about the internet, that there's this open source investigation where a lot of people who are gun enthusiasts, people who love guns, who shoot 30-06s and shoot these types of bullets, did experiment after experiment after experiment. I mean, it's great because it's like gives them something to shoot for. You know, they're like, oh, I can go fucking shoot my gun and test this out. And I love that, you know. So it's kind of cool. You have all these open source, you know, gun guys going like, nah, that's not how it happened. Sorry, guys. And that's the only reason that it's being revisited, you know. So moving on, I would like to discuss your boy, everyone's favorite senator, Lindsey Graham. There he is, Lindsey Graham at Disney World with a princess bubble wand. And it looks like his seat is in trouble. So I wanted to talk about this real quick. He was recently spotted, you know, with this bubble wand in Disneyland. And I joked when I saw this that should be that literally is the entire case for the Iran war right there. Lindsey Graham at Disney World with a bubble wand, because the entire thing, his entire advocacy for it is kind of like cover for his latent homosexuality, you know? And I can only imagine the file that the Mossad has on Mr. Graham here, given that. I mean, just look at that. Just that picture, the shape of that even is kind of phallic to begin with, you know, not to be a dirty-minded pervert, but just look at that. It kind of has a little bit of a, you know, phallic shape to it to begin with. And I love this girl in the background. She looks very authoritative with her hands on her hips. She's like, yo, you listen, kids. You're going to eat that turkey leg before we get in the car. I don't know where that came from, but if you've ever been to Disney World, they have Disneyland. They have the fucking big turkey legs. Everybody's much on this. Anyway, I'm totally getting off track here. Lindsey Graham's opponent in the South Carolina race is already being attacked for, you guessed it, Douglas Murray, can you tell us?
You're an anti-Semite.
Yes. Yes. Let's hear those sweet words one more time, Doug.
You're an anti-Semite.
Oh, God. Isn't he cute? Isn't he cute? It's like a chihuahua that barks at you, you know, with an English accent. Yo, rough, 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 rough. But we're gonna watch this news piece on Lindsey Graham's opponent here. This is actually pretty brilliant, and I think this is well, let's talk about this. So Lindsey Graham held a press conference to cry about campaign staffers for his Republican opponents making anti-Semitic posts. He demands fire them. The response from Paul Dans, who is Lindsey's opponent: Israel picks Lindsey Graham's staff, but they do not pick mine. I am not firing Vishbura, and I am calling on the people of South Carolina to fire Lindsey Graham. Absolute slaughter. And, you know, I don't know who this guy is. His politics are probably not the same as mine in a lot of cases, but I respect that. Have the courage of your convictions. That is the world I think that Trump created, is you just be who you are. He kind of ripped the mask off that, where I think politicians, and I'm not giving him credit for actually being legitimate in it, you know, but I think that for so long politicians danced around things like who they slept with, or like, you know, certain things that might be like third rails because it's used as a smear tactic. And Trump, being someone who's already in the public eye to begin with for such a long time, he's just like, no, like, yeah, I slept with a porn star. What are you going to do about it? You know? And I think people respect that a lot more than like pretending that you're like actually, you know, an angel and trying to be like, oh no, I did not have sex with that woman. You know what I mean? And again, Bill Clinton's the kind of guy that it doesn't matter what he says. He's a charming dude, and women love Billy, you know, Slick Willie, as the Republicans love to call him. But let's watch this piece from local South Carolina news, and I'll shut up about Bill Clinton. Enjoy.
These are the receipts. They're screenshots of writing, photos, and cartoons posted to social media. Senator Lindsey Graham says these posts were made by the members of his Republican opponents' campaign teams.
During Thursday's event, next to Senator Lindsey Graham were screenshots from social media posts.
Blatantly anti-Semitic.
These were posted by Vishbara, the communications director for candidate Paul Dan's staff. And the
You're an
post used explicit
anti-Semite.
language towards Israel and, quote, we just need to drop them as an ally, end quote. And Graham says another post was an AI-generated video also made by Burra.
He produced a cartoon with him being in a room depicting Jewish people as cockroaches, setting them on fire.
Graham says this post was made last fall and that Burra was fired from his previous job.
Lindsey's fake outrage there. It's so funny. I gotta rewind that. I gotta hear that again. Setting them on fire. Setting them on fire.
A cartoon with him being in a room depicting Jewish people as cockroaches, setting them on fire.
Graham says this post
Yo,
was
we
made
here
last
now.
fall and that Burra was
Stupid.
fired from his previous job.
He was rightly fired. 2 months later, Paul Dans hires him.
On Thursday, Graham called on Paul Dans to terminate Burra.
I am challenging Paul Dans today to fire him and condemn him.
In response, Dans wrote in part,
This is what he said.
No one in high school knew what the word anti-Semitic was until Ye made it popular.
Israel picks Lindsey Graham's staff, but they do not pick mine. I'm not firing Vishbara, and I am calling on the people of South Carolina to fire Lindsey Graham. Graham also called out Republican candidate Mark Lynch because of the post by his political director, Evan Mulch.
This is the cancer within the Republican Party.
Mulch's post depicted a shoe stomping on the Talmud, calling it, quote, a hate-filled book towards Jesus Christ, and other posts discussing women's suffrage.
For some reason, believes that women shouldn't be allowed to vote or shouldn't vote. They need to be focused on being worthy wives.
Senator Graham called on Lynch to fire Mulch.
Anybody with a campaign staffer that says these things needs to be fired. This will destroy the Republican Party.
And in response, Mark Lynch wrote, while Christians around the world are celebrating the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, Lindsey Graham's campaign is imploding. So it is unsurprising that in his desperation, Lindsey has chosen Holy Week to throw more slop against the wall. Reporting in Greenville, Lauren Miller, 7 News.
I love that politicians are now using the term slop. Lindsey Graham is using this to throw slop against the wall. And Kanye was asked for a comment. He had this.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
So you can see, I think one of my biggest takeaways from this whole ordeal here is it shows you how much the Overton window or the popular current has moved on this issue, where these guys are not afraid to just own that and just make fun of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's like, oh, these guys, the guy on the other team.
You're an anti-Semite.
And people just be like, oh my God, he's got to be fired. Oh, and not anymore. You can't do that anymore. I just want to hear that last part one more time on this. Let me add this back to the one more time here. This is just so glorious.
The wall. Reporting in Greenville, Lauren Miller. Lindsey has chosen Holy Week to throw more slop against the wall. Lindsey has chosen Holy Week to throw more slop against the wall. Reporting in Greenville.
Lindsey has chosen Holy Week to throw more slop against the wall. I applaud you. I applaud you, Paul Dan. Even though I may not like your politics, that's a brilliant move. So let's keep going here. We've got a couple more things to talk about today. And the first is my favorite and your favorite political party, the Democrats. What have the Democrats been up to lately? Well, this is what the Democrats have been up to. And I think it's funny because I went looking for a little bit of an article to cite on what's going on in the Democratic Party, because what's going on is they're attacking anti-war leftists and trying to make sure that they have no chance at being involved in the Democratic primary. Now, I showed you a couple weeks ago the garbage approved DNC candidates list that had people like J.B. Pritzker on it, AOC, of course, Rahm Emanuel. And so this cycle is starting to pick up again, where you're going to have these guys being attacked by the, establishment press, if you will, or the DNC controlled media. And I want to show you, to start, just a post from Nick Cruz from Revolutionary Blackout Network, because Nick, I think, does a great job of, and this is actually an old post of Nick's from a little while back, where he's calling out Hasan Piker for being kind of the fake that he is. And I think this is just a good, it's a 23-second clip to revisit, but here it is. Hasan Piker attacked Julian Assange and his supporters while calling them fascists for standing up for a free press. This is why the establishment loves him and put him on the cover of magazines. The CIA couldn't ask for a more suitable left.
Hero Julian Assange being extradited. What the fuck is wrong with you? Assange stands on the internet are some of the most psychotic weirdos that it's just like, just stop, okay? Just be normal. Just stop. Do your fucking weird thing at the Jimmy Dore stream, okay? This is not the Jimmy Dore stream. We do a bunch of different content here. Go hang out with like weirdo fucking fascists, okay? Bro, why are you not mentioning hero Julian Assange being extradited? What the fuck is wrong with you?
So he's calling Jimmy Dore supporters fascists. And this is from 2025. This is from last year. But this is just to show you how ridiculous even the opposition is in this party. But then you also have incidents like this. And again, this is just to show you, reiterate the point I made last week, which is Democrat versus Republicans is right-wing infighting. That's from Horror Girl. What's her name? Something Tired Peasant Horror Girl on Twitter. That's her quote. So I want to give credit where credit is due. But she said it. Democrat versus Republican is just right-wing infighting. So here is Mark Ames pointing out what's going on right now. Classic DNC covert sleaze op leaked to right-wing media to hide their fingerprints. Exclusive audio. Michigan's left-wing Democratic Senate candidate Abdul El Said told staffers he wanted to avoid making a public statement about the assassination of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei because, quote, there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad. He says, oh no, he didn't race in to cheer the greatest geopolitical fuck up in 70 years. How embarrassing for him. That's a good one. Someone said something in here about he needs to check his staffers. So here is the Free Beacon article about this. Washington Free Beacon. Hopefully you can see this now. Yeah, you can. Michigan's left-wing Democratic Senate candidate Abdul El Said told staffers he wanted to avoid making a public statement about the assassination of the Ayatollah or taking any public position on it all because there's a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad about his death, according to audio from a private campaign strategy called Obtained by the Washington Free Beacon, which of course is a right-wing outlet. If reporters pressed him to take a position, he said he would change the subject to Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm just going to go straight to pedophilia, frankly, El Said said. I'll be like, pedophile president decides he doesn't like the front page news, so he decides to take us into another war. His remarks came during a conference call with his communications team on March 1st, which the candidate and his communications team discussed the messaging on Operation Epic Fury. The previous day, February 28th, an Israeli airstrike killed the Iranian dictator, who as president of Iran and then as the country's supreme leader starting in 1989 oversaw the murder and torture of political opponents inside Iran and deadly terrorist attacks against the country's enemies, including hundreds of Americans. Listen to that propaganda right there.
I want to be just like you. I figure all I need's a lobotomy and some tights.
So that is the state of the Democrats. Constantly stomping, punching to the left, and ensuring that they are nothing but a pile of shit with sprinkles on top. A barely different option to the neocon right. And a lot of the proof of that is, how they're handling this war too. So just to go back to the slides here, Democrats can't even do an I told you so because their Zionist-controlled party supports this war. Nobody in the House have filed articles of impeachment, and they've delayed war powers vote in order to give Trump and the Israelis more time to make this war permanent. I think I called it Iranistan the other day. So your boy here says Washington State Democrats sent me this about their No Kings protest. They make no mention that a war is going on without the approval of Congress, still putting up the fight for cheap immigrant DoorDash labor. And I love that characterization there.
Yay!
One more banger for you. Putin's currently, we haven't talked much about Cuba. I'm going to try to get into this next week, maybe. I only have time to put together so much material every week, but Putin is currently sending material support for Cuba as the United States is coordinated with NATO countries to starve them. Putin is also standing in support of Iran against the genocidal assault by the United States, Israel, alleged genocidal, and the entire NATO alliance. Sincerely fuck the NATO left for siding with these genocidal monsters over Russian brothers and sisters who are resisting the genocidal Epstein regime. And last but not least, a good example of why you should be scared to death of communism. China rejects Israeli request to enact a law criminalizing anti-Israel sentiment, declaring we do not allow foreign entities to dictate the rights of our people. And that's going to be it for this week's edition of The Democrats Can Suck My Balls. Here we go. All right. Well, we're winding down here. We got a couple more things to talk about real quick. And this one is a little bit more lighthearted. This is the return of Kanye West. Look at that fucking stage setup. Is that not amazing? How can you not just, be in awe of this guy? What? And everyone's like, oh, because he made a song. It's one of the catchiest songs ever about, hailing a certain very bad person who did very bad things. We'll leave it at that. But the artistic, just think about this right here. This is what I thought about when I saw this, because I love Kanye. I unapologetically love Kanye, as you've probably noted by my wealth of Kanye samples.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who no one in high school knew what the word anti-Semitic was until Ye made it popular.
And let's be honest, he was ahead of the curve again on that whole thing. Oh my God. But look at that. So the first thing I thought when I saw this is, man, like just having the mind to come up with that idea, let alone the will to execute it, is fucking something to be respected on every. I mean, look at that shit. That's a fucking live photo of the goddamn event from the New York Times or Rolling Stone or one of those shitty fucking publications. But just based on that alone, I was totally in awe of this. But as the news started to come out and everything. So let's start with this. The first bit of news that I saw about this, because I totally forgot it was happening. I obviously didn't have a ticket. I wish I did now, clearly. But the first piece of news I saw come out about this show was Kanye brought out a special guest. And it's the kind of special guest that, you're not really going to see all that often. So that guest was Lauryn Hill. Ye originally wanted Lauryn Hill on All Falls Down in 2004 as it interpolates her song Mystery of Iniquity, but he couldn't get the sample cleared at the time. 2 decades later, he brings her out to perform it together for the first time in front of a sold-out crowd of 80,000 fans. Legendary. Look at that goddamn stage. How amazing is that? That's Lauryn Hill. So I'm not going to play this because I don't want to get copyright struck, but this was just such a beautiful thing, you know? Look at that. What an absolute legend Kanye is. And someone asked, like, on Twitter, they're like, how did he get Lauryn Hill? And I was like, yo, he probably paid her a fuck ton of money is what happened. I mean, I know that she's had trouble with like tax debts or that kind of thing or whatever, but regardless, you know, it's so cool to bring out someone like Lauryn Hill, who's kind of been, you know, in hiding, I would say, not necessarily in hiding, but, you know, out of the public eye, at least, you know, for the last few years. Kind of legendary, no doubt. Just to show you a little bit more of the footage of this too, before we move on. Here's just kind of a little bit more of a all of the lights. Look at that. Someone made a cool comment too about because of the way that the stage is set up, like Kanye is kind of on top of the world and the people around with their phones with the lights are like the stars. He made the audience the stars. Like, oh, that's fucking cool. Oh my god, really fucking deep, bro. But it gets good. It gets good. It gets better from here. So here is, first of all, the guest list. And as we get into this, you're going to see why I'm showing you this, because this is not only a guest list, this is a list of criminal suspects. Dave Chappelle, Erykah Badu, Rod Wave, I have no idea who that is. Coyle Ray, don't know who that is. Chloe Diplo, I know. Paul Pierce, I know. Basketball player. Kevin Gates, I know. I don't know ASAP Nast. I do know ASAP Rocky, though. The rest of these names are not really people that I know. But just to give you another shot of Kanye's stage, look at how goddamn cool that is. All right, so this is where it gets good. Now, of course, you probably know Kanye was canceled recently because, you know, he's a terrible person and he did a lot of very terrible things. And I'm being completely sarcastic here as I say this. And I just accidentally removed my damn slideshow from the screen. But a lot of people were upset about Kanye coming back and no one really calling him out or dragging him as the violator of, you know, what I guess decorum that he is. So let's start with this. Losers, all of them. Me seeing all the celebrities attending the Kanye concert. And this guy's like, losers, all of them. I said, people who went to a Kanye show hurt my feelings, anti-Semitism or something. And so there was this kind of sentiment among a lot of people. I'm going to show you one more of these. Just that's like, what? And this guy says, I'm disappointed with Lauryn Hill. I'm sure she won't be able to sleep tonight because of how disappointed and disgusted you are. So yeah, there was a lot of this sentiment, it seemed like, on Twitter, and there's a lot of these people, these people that are kind of obsessed with being mad at someone that are complaining about Kanye's comeback. But I honestly think he was kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff. And another thing that's interesting is that he is one of the few people who is, I think he kind of proved that if you're talented enough, you're uncancelable. Because if you saw the set list that he put out, it's just such an epic set list. And it just reminded me like how many great songs Kanye has. And he's just such a great artist. And you know what I mean? It's kind of like someone else in the comments said, I knew Kanye would get back to normal once he broke away from the Kardashians. And you see I didn't even, let me pull up one of these clips, but there's clips of him walking around with his new wife. And I was saying, I think she is actually hotter than Kim is. And she seems like obviously pretty chill. So here's this is him with walking through the show with her. Off the volume here. Oh, sorry. I didn't have that on the stage. My bad. Yeah, so here he is with Bianca Sensori, his new wife, and his kids at the show. So it does kind of seem like, I'm willing to bet, it wasn't so long ago that he kind of came out and apologized about the stuff that he had said. I don't know if you remember that or not. Might even have to look that up real quick just to remember what it was all about. But I wondered when I saw that now, looking back on that now, I wondered if he didn't do this because without doing this, he wouldn't have been allowed to do a show like this. Well, I can't find it, so I'm just going to putter around live on stream. Here it is. I should come a little bit better organized sometimes, but here you go. This is what I was talking about. The rapper, now legally known as Ye, has deleted all his Instagram content aside from an apology post in Hebrew. So he did that, I'm betting, because he probably couldn't rent out the venue to do that show unless he did something like that, was my guess. But I'm glad to see Kanye back, and whoever said it, said it best. Like, if you're just uncancelable if you have enough talent, and it's not like, this is the other thing. I think people are such oversensitive clowns when it comes to words people say. It's like, come on. There are people being, I was talking to my brother the other night, and he was kind of whining about his childhood a little bit. And as he's going off about as my brother's like going off about all the problems he had in childhood, I was like, yeah, well, at least none of your relatives were struck with a missile. At least you weren't in Palestine and didn't have to watch like a building crush your kids. And he's like, well, yeah, that's not my experience. But I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get you to put it into perspective, dude. Because people that freak out over things like words people say, it's kind of the same basic thing. It's like, okay, Kanye said some stuff that offends you, but maybe look into it and figure out what the context is before you rush to judgment in the public square. And you rush to, because it's not like he went out and murdered someone or he didn't rape anyone. He said some things that hurt people's feelings. So to me, it's kind of like that type of cancellation, especially if you're a person like Kanye with great art, you can come back from. Now, if you're the guy from that group Lost Prophets who, got caught, graping infant babies and stuff, like, you're going to get put in jail and probably be murdered by one of the inmates. And that's fine. That's kind of maybe the path you chose in life if you're that type of person. But in the case of Kanye, all he did was say some things that hurt people's feelings. So I think he's, calm down, people. I can't believe Lauryn Hill broke my heart. She supports white supremacy now. People are pathetic. All right. Well, we've already been going for 2 hours. I always wind up landing right around 2 hours. And the last little bit today, I want to show you a couple videos that are kind of just funny takes on the war, as I like to end on a high note, or at least a funny note, giving you something to laugh about. The first is Iranian propaganda. And this is, I think, one of the better Iranian propaganda videos that I've seen in the wave of Iranian propaganda. And I consume both American and Iranian propaganda. I like to be fair and balanced in my propaganda consumption. if that makes sense to you. Clap your hands. Check this out. So this is Trump being denied access to the Strait of Hormuz party.
Hey, Trump, you are fired.
Okay.
I'm going to turn that down for a second. I'm sure I'll get copyright stricken. It sounds like they're saying make oil great again. I think that's what they're saying. So I thought that was pretty brilliant as far as propaganda goes. And then in related Iranian propaganda, we also have this AI parody of the movie Titanic someone made that I also found incredibly brilliant, mainly because of the dialogue contained within. Watch this. Fantastic stuff here.
Don't let go. Whatever you do, don't let go.
I'll never let go, Donnie.
I'm flying, Don. I'm flying.
They're going to get me for copyright. I know it. That's so disturbing.
Please, I need another trillion or so. Anything for you, BB.
That one's my favorite. That last line is just clutch. Please, I need another trillion or so. And last but not least, we have the epic Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, for you doing some beat poetry. This is actually pretty brilliant as well.
Words with venom, words that bind. Words used like weapons to cloud my mind.
Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct.
Words with venom.
One more time.
Words that bind. Words used like weapons to cloud my mind.
Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct.
Anyhow, that's what I got for you this week. It's getting crazy out there, but like I said, I have this kind of strange sense of doom and optimism. It's kind of like almost like a 50-50 mix where I feel like things are going to change in a big way, but it might be for the better in a lot of ways. We'll see. Fingers crossed. But we may have to. Sometimes, it's darkest just before the light. To use a cheesy, cliched phrase. Before we clock off here, I got to find just one more thing to take you out with today, and let's see what we got in the bag of tricks here for you as we close out today's fruitful exercises in political commentary. That's what I'm going to start calling these, fruitful exercises in political commentary. What do we got here? Reusable videos. How about we go with dun 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 dun. What can I show you guys on the way out today? What's a good you got Blinken bombing in the free world. Voters are a threat to democracy. Warp speed. Trump juice. Oh, let's play some Iraq war. Let's play some. This is not going to be funny. Oh. Since we're on a Kanye tip today, this is absolutely perfect Forgive me for my fuddy-duddying along here. But we're going to take you out today with, I'm going to play a couple clips for you, some Iraq War era clips, but also to start, we're going to take you out with the infamous clip of Kanye on Alex Jones. Thank you so much for joining me today, y'all. Please like and subscribe. Spread the word. Just hit 700 subs. I said, once I get past 1,000, I'll start doing it without the glasses, without the hat here and there. Not that it matters. I mean, I actually kind of probably won't because it just makes life easier. You don't have to look at my fucking stoned ass eyes while I'm reciting all this stuff to you or my shiny bald head. But I'm very appreciative, very grateful to all of you who tune in and watch. Thank you so much for giving me this soapbox and this method to vent. And please hit me up with any constructive criticism or corrections you may have. I always appreciate that. And thank you again. Happy Easter if you celebrate that. And if you don't, well, you're a dirty heathen. You need to find Jesus. Take care of yourselves out there. We'll see you next time.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
I've got the perfect answer for the ADL. They are going to have to listen up. What we did is we brought Netanyahu with us.
I mean, I'm in the twilight zone right now.
Netanyahu, what do you have to say? What do you have to say to Alex Jones right now, Nick Fuentes and Ye? It was bad. It was bad for Trump to meet with Nick and Ye. Okay. I had no idea your voice is going to sound like that, Netanyahu.
So you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu?
I just heard about this guy 2 weeks ago since like the tweet, and I thought he had a funny name. I heard he's like really into like, he's like a super killer and I could die for saying this. So in case this the last time you ever hear from me.
Well, look. I'm glad you guys are here.
We weren't alert enough. We didn't dig enough. And we shouldn't have been fooled in this way.
Even Oprah got in on the act, featuring in October 2002, New York Times reporter Judith Miller.
The U.S. intelligence community believes that Saddam Hussein has deadly stocks of anthrax, of botulinum toxin, which is one of the most virulent poisons known to man.
Liberal hawk Kenneth Pollock.
And what we know for a fact from a number of defectors who've come out of Iraq over the years is that Saddam Hussein is absolutely determined to acquire nuclear weapons and is building them as fast as he can.
And the right-hand man to Ahmed Chalabi.
And so, do the Iraqi people want the American people to liberate them?
Absolutely. In 1991, Iraqi people...
I hope that doesn't offend you.
When one guest dared to express doubt, Oprah would have none of it.
I just don't know what to believe with the media.
Oh, we're not trying to show you propaganda. We're just showing you what is.
I understand that.
Okay, you have a right to your opinion. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Contrary opinions weren't very popular in Washington either, as ambitious Democrats embraced the now conventional but unconfirmed wisdom.
In the wake of September 11th, who among us can say with any certainty to anybody that the weapons might not be used against our troops or against allies in the region?
It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.